Okay. Hello everyone, welcome to today's episode. The title is A Contentment Beyond the Content of Life, and I'll dive into it. Pretty much I see the world as an expression of self and world, I could say. What I mean is that we human beings, we're creatures from an unconscious phase of evolution where there was the world. There emerged an unconscious body. This unconscious body roamed, kept going forward until it became conscious of itself. And now from the conscious self, the consciousness is moving from the boundary of the world. So we are going to a phase where there's a huge potential that people have experienced individualism through objectivity and subjectivity, and now the curiosity for the non-dual presence is arising, I find. That means we've lived as individual beings, now we're wondering, all right, where's this individualism going? And so new collective, you can say events of beinghood are taking place. Now, what is the point of a contentment beyond the content of life? If we look at reality as if you are a creature in a world, in a subjective way, that translates as a self in a world. Now, the self is the observer in certain traditions and cultures, they see it. The world is the observed, and all of life is a relationship, is an oscillation, is a dance between the observer and the observed. That means you have a mind, yet that mind has content in it. A person can have any amount of invisible consideration or metaphysical identity or a sort of relationship with abstracthood, but there is change, and there is change being watched, and that's ultimately life. And so the content is what changes. That means when you wake up, let's say you have a belief, you're like, I believe, it's a great day. And then you sleep and you wake up and you see, even though you believe it's a great day, you're not the same being to have the same kind of belief. So it's not the same kind of great day. It's not the same kind of belief. Because the believer changes. So I don't know what believers and disbelievers, they're believing and disbelieving. It's a game of masks. It's a game of where language is masking one moment from a certain possibility, and another set of language is masking the moment from another set of range of possibilities. This relationship of the self and the world, it does sound simple, People may feel, yeah, I know I'm a self in a world. But let me tell you, the observance of the content of the moment can become full. So that means you can identify as a part of what is in your sensory perception, or you can identify as all of it simultaneously, instantly. So the mystical path is as if we are a self inside a sphere, and that self is noticing the sphere, noticing that its awareness is not an identity. Your awareness is not shaped, but shapes move in it. We are like a candlelight where the moths flying around it is the material universe, is the material realm. I've written two sentences here which are the skies I'm aiming to pilot in this talk. One is contentment with the self of a world, and the other is contentment with the world of a self. If a person can acknowledge these two experientially, you cannot be an object or a subject, you are a movement. a watching movement. You become the watching mover of your moment. That means the watcher doesn't move, but everything is. Everything watched is moving, in a sense. We think of a self. We think of a known self and an unknown self. We think of a world. We think of a known world and an unknown world. And so there's the relationship of the known self with the known world and the unknown world, and the relationship of the world with the known self and the unknown self. So what does that mean? That means as an experience is new to the person, it is also new to that world where that person is experiencing that event. You know? It's like a new customer in a coffee shop that's opened. It's like that's new for both the coffee shop and the customer. You know? A lot of customer service is just smooth emotional transition from an activity. There is a view that the person thinks, yeah, I'm one kind of person, I'm going to go through this life. And then there's a view that you're not per se one kind of person. As the Japanese say, the man is the room he enters. You're going through various rooms where the stimulus is different, therefore the constitution to how the personality responds is different. So let us take the world as a sphere which we are inside, and in this sphere, endless phenomena is shaking. So imagine you're in one of those, what do you call them? Those like Christmas gifts where you shake them and like the glitter inside the glass, gosh, what do you call these? It's like a small castle in like a glass container where you shake it and it's like snow, the glitter inside it or something. Right now, the content of my moment as I'm speaking to you includes my physical existence in this moment, my body. It includes the existence of other phenomena, the room I'm in, the world I'm in, but it also includes the existence of the way I interpret how physical phenomena moves. That means there's an object in front of me right now. When this object falls, I don't say an object fell, I say a cup fell. So the language is another dimension of movement upon the material movement. You can say there is an immaterial, subjective realm of movement simultaneously as there is an objective realm of movement. Because if you notice, people that the person doesn't know, they don't worry about. It's as if you can only worry about what you know. And you may worry about something you don't know, but you don't even know what you're worrying about, even. That means there is intuitive moments. There's been moments where I've suddenly felt something is off. You know? As if the moment has poked my intuition has been the moment poking me. And then I've looked around and I suddenly noticed something extreme. You know, something that I had either forgotten or something. There was something, you know. So our intelligence is pretty much we're inside the sphere, so we're identifying with the content inside the sphere. This contentment beyond the content of life is a recognition that in certain esoteric practices or in mystical ways of thought, they had a notion that we were multidimensional, but they believed that if we weren't supposed to conduct this dimension through this dimension. You know? That means it's as if this dimension is a glove from a higher dimension to work in. You know? We have had the idea of unknown minds entering known bodies in metaphysics. And we've had known, so here's the thing. For example, Terence McKenna gives a point here. There's some people in the New Age community in the Mount Shasta area in Arizona where they feel they are channeling. They feel like an alien is on the mountain and the alien's telepathically communicating to them, so they even think they're the alien or whatnot. In Mount Shasta, this is something that's going on in the New Age community. Now, there are some people, just like how they're seeing like higher dimensional, abstract reflections of self kind of being communicated through them. I'm saying just like we've had the notion of a mind, unknown mind, entering a known body, we've also had the notion of known bodies entering unknown minds. You see, so we have like a solid becoming a liquid, and we have a liquid becoming a solid. Do you know? It's like that. Honestly, the dimensions of the human being, I laughed when I noticed this. I'm like, all right, so we see as nature of a substance, for example, let's say H2O, it becomes something like there's a solid state, liquid state, gas state, and I was looking at the human being, and I'm like, some human beings, they are solid. It's like just matter. If I can't see it, it's like there's no point of me to consider it. And then there's a sense of those who are more like agnostic oriented, where they're like, okay, I don't know, man. It's like it's like it's 50-50. That's like a liquid state of mind where the person feels there's still mystery. The unknown hasn't been erased. When the unknown erased, life does get control. You feel like a rational animal, but you at the same time feel you have gotten rid of the mystery of life. That would be more like so we have the solid state, the materialist. We have the liquid state, the philosophical mind, let us say, the philosophical lens. And then we have the gas state, which is the mystical lens. And I have been fascinated by the possibility that the same time we're being visible, in order to comprehend our visibility, we have to identify the concept that there's some things we don't see. Sorry, guys, this was on mute. Um, can someone tell me, please, if the last if ah did the listeners hear me talk about Socrates's ending? Out of curiosity, this thing was on mute. I'm not sure how. What was the last thing? Okay, I gotta. Oh my God, guys, how's this so, for the listeners? Like, how's how's this possible? It's showing there's nothing said for like 10 minutes. Was I on mute for 10 minutes? Oh my God. So sorry, folks. I think I accidentally had this on mute and I was talking. Anyways, I'll just go from where I feel the rhythm was last. Pretty much, I was showing you Socrates' picture. I don't know if people heard that part, but if you look at the wallpaper, you'll see Socrates, this picture by Jacques Louis David. And it's an important moment. And I was pretty much explaining that Socrates, on his deathbed, before he drank the poison, he was sentenced to drink poison, by the way, before. Anyways, yeah, pretty much Socrates, he says to the people before drinking the poison, before going through his sentencing, and he could have even gotten out of that situation, but Socrates says, I will either go to a place where there will be no Socrates, or I will go to a place where all the questions that I have wondered about in this life will be answered. And so I was just saying that we human beings, we are in a system that is moving before our eyes moved in it. We are living in a world that was alive before we were. And so the honor of the modern man is to step beyond the world he has seen. That we are not just selves growing, we are also attributeless eyes noticing the change crystallize. I think about myself in this moment. I notice the objective realms and I notice the inner realms, the subjective component to the moment. Then I look at the world. And I notice that the world translates in a way where it is objective most immediately. But due to the subjective viewer, the world also evolves subjectively. So it's strange. The value is that we are a multidimensional self. We are an object that evolved into a subject to itself, and now we are a subject that is evolving into the rhythms of the presence of experience. That human beings no longer need gods or no longer need to act like gods. The only freedom is what you do with what you've been given. There is no freedom beyond this. That the mentality can be, you can think it's one life, you can think it's endless lifetimes, for example, through the Buddhist perspective, through the yogic perspective, but then the question comes that in every lifetime, what is the common denominator? What is one thing that has not been changing in every moment of our lives? And it is attentions and existence's instantaneity. That is the glitch in the system. That is the veil ripping itself open. We can cry over spilt milk, or we can leave the cows alone. Contentment is the key to the future generations. Tolerance, as Bertrand Russell said, is the greatest advice. That without tolerance, without patience, we haven't allowed ourselves to see, we haven't allowed the world to complete its performance. The businessman in the boardroom was dying to speak, but had understood silence was golden. For after all realms have expressed, the realm that expresses then is the last shout in the microphone. If you feel wrong, you have accepted the wrong. If you feel right, you have accepted the right. But what is wrong and right changes because the cultural programs change. And we have all been 8 billion creatures on this rock acting like it's normal to be 8 billion creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere. There is nothing normal about this world. There is nothing normal about the cosmological position. Normality was the invention of an animal that didn't dare to look beyond. Rip your normality apart. Because it is the past occupying the future. Contentment will only arise if you see the emptiness of the system. If you're not feared, if you do not fear the loss, can you lose? When man has failed, it is the ultimate permission slip that the only way left is up. That your failures are gifts from the gods, and the success are the gifts from yourself to yourself. That if you care, you move towards. If you don't care, you will let yourself be moved. And that's the advanced civilization we need. Not an advanced civilization that is masking itself in ideology, but an advanced civilization, and we imagine in the future, whatever amount you want to see in the future, I'll grant you that, but imagine in the future the civilization comes and says human beings are not here to work for themselves, because their selves are a whole. They are a system. That means first you live as a part of the system for yourself, then you live for the system as the system. We are missing our collective identities. The celebrity, the star, wore sunglasses looking at the stars, wondering why they were dim. For the first time, we have to allow a singular animal to work with a multidimensional mind. the era of minds, when we are more mind than we are body, where we are the watcher's freedom before the movement of that which is being observed. Because I see my hand, but the sight of my hand does not move my hand. That means you can have your eyes closed and you can move. How epic is that? That we can move in knowing, and we can move in known states, and we can move in unknown states. And that's my fascination. I feel that we should get rid of this notion of there is something to be taught and there is something to be learned. This is archaic. It is just exploration. It's just exploration. Forget every teaching and realize the world is one event. And that is the strength on the battlefield. You know, the Sufis would say, it is easy to have the pearl, to feel the winds of light when you're alone. It is easy to be a good person. It is easy to be in your own realm. But can you imagine in the future people stepping out of, like, opening their front door, and they see every human being has some sort of sound-based jetpack, and every person is flying towards advancing. That means I wouldn't mind. Here's the thing. If the person's going to work, then go all out. That means if the person is going to try something, that means... okay, here. Maybe I should choose my words more correctly here, more mindfully. Your effort is the only way you get to see progress. That something has to move you, not from the outside. That means if something moved me from the outside, in some sense, I could stop giving the talk. But when the inner realms know what they are, when you observe how you're being a human being, you notice the human dimension, which is relevant to design, and you notice the being dimension, which is relevant to awareness. So if life equals self, being aware that it's a self, self-awareness, the awareness is coming across as the conditions of the world. The self is coming across as the aware. The world is the road, the self is the vehicle on it. When the vehicle is on the road, they are inseparable. When the vehicle is in motion, there is no way that an object and subject could be separate when the conscious vehicle is in motion. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj says, first, the I am myself comes. Then, the I am myself goes. The I am all comes. Then the I am all goes. The I am comes. Then the I am goes. And nature is. And man's individualism no longer is acting like God in the void. And so the honesty with the void is the freedom of the oneness mind. That if you do not see the void, you can never be a fool. If you cannot see that you can lose, what victory are you running for? Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj says diversity without separateness is the ultimate that the mind can touch. That means individual humanhood can go to the ultimate edge before it reaches the language threshold of unity and uniqueness. That is the mind's game. Your mind is trying to be unique, yet it is trying to be united. That is the whole aim of individual existence. That's the game of the individual. That what can an individual do other than to notice the collective empire, the collective civilization, the kingdoms of man now aiming to extend into galaxies. You know what it's like? You know, regardless of who we are or what we are, it's as if it's like the species is like, we are human beings, we were here, and the cosmos will hear our voice. That is the true galactic game. Not stories of abstraction, but we look at reality and we're like, where is it going? And then we meet the abstract. And contentment is like a lightning that strikes you. It strikes you when you have let go of the weapon. When you have let go of the war, yet the might within still goes its path. Intelligence, is it arising only from the outer? Is it arising only from the inner? Where is that ultimate state? As Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj was saying, when you come to the I am, then it is just am. Existence doesn't have problems. The experiencer contains itself as a temporary phenomena, so it endlessly has a game of probabilities to play. Evolution was a singular point, realizing it is in a multidimensional universe. We might not realize it, but our inner realms is a hidden city. Shangri-La in Tibetan Buddhism, this divine mystical city, its doors are within. Similar to how Rumi says, I have lived on the edge of insanity, on the lip of insanity, wanting to know reasons, knocking on a door. It opens. I have been knocking from the inside. Your suffering is generated from the inside, not from the outside. The events are generated from the outside. What is happening in front of our eyes is an event. What is happening behind our eyes is the comparison of this event to other abstract memories. Memories are like the memory finish, but you have access to the event. You know, you have access to the self you were in, like you're in the memory of your childhood, for example. So what is going on is we're identifying as points, and then we're referring ourselves to other points. Now there comes the filter of the known variables and the unknown variables, and if the known variables are louder than the unknown variables, you believe. You stop exploring because you feel you know. That means, do you know what it's like? Imagine I gave the first talk of these lectures of this channel, and I was like, that's it. I believe this only. I'm never going to change my view. Like, do you see? Nature has a seniority compared to the thoughts of man on nature. And that seniority is the silence of the collective event. So in one view, I was like, what is this? Does it mean that, like, if there was another parallel dimension, or if there was another universe, could it be that in our universe we were like individuals that noticed the collective and we became tribal? But could it be in some universes they were tribal first and their evolution was to break? And what does contentment mean in a changing world? Does it mean that the only thing you can be content with is change? Does it mean that when a person accepts change, the sacredness of the energy of the cosmos activates? Could it be that our whole lives we have been living in the inner film and not noticing the silence of the outer? The unknown will translate as silence and stillness for a creature that is identifying its knowledge with movement and noise and sound. That in our silence, we are humanity. We are all human beings. But in our voices, simulations run towards the objective, trying to replace it in our eyes. This is why life has an authority of experiential value that surpasses any concept. And you might not believe, I'm a person who talks a lot, but I am telling you, language is just a technology. It's just a paintbrush of how we function as an individuals for now. And this contentment, any person can attain it. I attained it in a strange way. And when I say attain, I mean I had a way where my inner realms purified. Just like how like your let's say you get something like cuts your hand. The body's intelligence heals it. Similarly, once the person is honest, the body's intelligence heals itself. So there's been times where I've thought, could the intuition be like the thoughts that are like the white blood cells going to fight off the bacteria of the cut on the body? That means I thought, could it be that there's a self-sustaining code written in the program of evolutionary design? That means it's as if we maintain ourselves. What we think right now is desire, is ego, it is just an angle. Guys, I'll be right back. Hang on. Okay. So, Okay, perfect, guys. I found a nice song here. All right. Yeah, so pretty much we're sandwiched between either two unknown realms or two known realms. Either our present experience of life feels it's sandwiched between a past playing out of the elements of the world and a future playing out of the elements of the world. I noticed something very fascinating, that human beings, we are habitual creatures. We are also identifying creatures that identify with the realm, and so we get into certain patterns of shape, as if we're like this clay, and as we live in the world, we're getting sculpted bit by bit. As if every choice we make is a choice in the design of what memory your future self will have. So technically, we are designers of the memories of our future self in this moment. That means as you live, it's not just the past that is important to consider. It is also consider how are you walking into the future. Because it's easy to know how you've walked in the past. But the thing about the past is it's past. That means everybody who's suffering about yesterday, they're not seeing tomorrow. And the simple thing about tomorrow is that nobody knows what it's going to do. Tomorrow, the concept of the future is like a friend where you're like, hey, what's going on? And it's like new, new information. In my science fiction, I had created a character which the first beginning scene is this child in this glass spaceship, going to Earth because its planet, this extraterrestrial child in a glass spaceship going to Earth because the planet got destroyed and the uncle of the kid was on a sort of responsibility on a mission on Earth, had gone to Earth on a mission. Now there's something this character does when he lands on Earth, that it's like this little alien kid, and this little alien kid goes and touches this tree. And when this alien kid touches the tree, he's such an advanced creature that suddenly he gets access to the history of the earth. As if we thought what our actions were just, like I'm saying, nature has memory. And so in this story, the kid touches the tree and he gets access to the memory of nature. I feel in the future there will probably come a moment where they may suddenly imagine everything we're doing now the future can see. Imagine everything that has happened the future will know. And the cool question is, after you have reached the absolute of knowledge, what then? What then? For me in my life, I sat down and I wondered all the different ways that this lifetime could be raised from the dirt. And I realize every way I have thought about my life, inevitably in the progression in the inner realms, it's unknown. I speak of an advanced civilization, yet I also feel the winds of the unknown. And that's the thing, because if you really love the world, in whatever service provided to it, there will come a moment where, just like the warrior drops its weapon, the human being drops the idea. And that's the thing. That's the ability of your inner realms. When you don't identify with language, you can just like whoever's listening to this, if there's an object in front of you, just please pick it up. Please pick it up with your hand and look at it and then drop it on the table or wherever you picked up that object. Just put the object down. You see, it's the same with the inner realms. It's the same with every idea human beings have worshipped. For how long? Objects and subjects become the only stage for attention. For how long? If you don't fear the unknown, you have not feared your life. You know, there's the way this world is that I think most the eyes of youth perhaps may see it this way. That the world is a pressure and release system, and when the person is younger, it's the pressure is arising from the intensity of the voice of the world. That means it's as if in every ecosystem that a creature has lived in was the invisible, a sort of invisible voice influencing their expression. That an animal in nature is not only the animal, that we thinking the concept of an animal, a self without a world is possible, or a world without a self is possible. Anytime you step outside of the dualistic room, the dualistic dimension, you are either moving as the whole moment, or the whole moment is being moved. If you take the Zen approach, you enter non-duality through emptiness. You take the monotheistic approach, you enter non-duality through the idea of the singular, oneness. A sort of, you attain, you go towards oneness that way. If you go from the secular mode, you attain non-duality through infinity. That means the most fascinating kind of individual we can fathom is an individual with an infinite direction and an infinite speed, an infinite velocity to life, where the direction can't doubt itself because it's endless, and the speed can't doubt itself and it's endless. And it's as if when you realize you're the cosmos in the human being, you start laughing as if the universe was never silent. We have feared our own humanhood, and we have denied the inner realms their birthright to express in the outer. That means you as a mind are not here to be a statue for the civilization. The civilization doesn't need statues. The civilization needs actual eyes that see it. Whatever way you attain that, it's I've already saluted you. Mr.Within has saluted you. Because it's all about sensitivity to life. You can say, for example, a mother, or you can say, like, when you love someone, you are not, it's your, imagine your child, like, I'm seeing it this way, that it's as if, like, the effect of our own actions is like our own child. It's as if we're not just creating meaning, because there is dynamism. Meaning appears, it's changing. So it's kind of like the person who suddenly, this is meditation pretty much. You know those kind of like escalator, horizontal, like just flat escalators, I don't know what you call them. Those flat, those, flat escalators. You see them at airports. It's like life is like that. Meditation is like that. When you stop moving, the point is not to not have thoughts, that's impossible. And it's super unnecessary. It's like there's no point to not having thoughts. It's realizing you're not a thought experientially. So when you stop moving, you notice the escalator is moving. Right now, the inner realms and the outer realms are moving simultaneously, so they feel like one thing. But if you stop moving the inner realms, which is the point of meditation, the outer realms, you notice what's moving the outer realms. What that means is a person could be like, oh man, I'm suffering, I'm in pain, this stories of life is, life is unfortunate, what do I do? But then if the person for a moment steps out of that inner realm thought structure and architecture, they will notice they are not that character. Because for me, little did I know, I was studying film to be a director, and little did I know I was studying human psychology. That the filmmaker wants to show something to the world, and the audience is the human being. That means when a filmmaker makes a film for human beings, not a sort of certain demographic, that film surpasses the test of time. Think of how many shades of color there exists. Now think of how many shades of self and worldhood that could exist. Now wonder why your eyes are in the room, and then bow to the silence that has always been you. There's moments where you don't know, guys. I've had some, some intense emotional moments where I've been just completely just alone and in solitude. I remember there was a moment where this was way back. This is way even before 2011. I gave these talks, started giving them in 2014. So this is way back. Just as a human being, my nature. I remember there was I was in Iran at some point. 2011, the summer. I think I was visiting. Before 2011, like in the summer, I was visiting, and what the experience I had was I had attended this party in like the north of Iran, and people were of course in altered state. Like everybody had drank, and it was a situation where something strange had happened, where I was very like in a sort of extroverted, very happy, in the moment kind of mood, but something had happened where I felt an self-exile. That means one thing that I've seen a complete pattern in my psychology, that there has been certain actions I have self-exile, like I have rather than push the world, I have pushed the self away. The self I was in that moment, I've pushed that self away to have a different blueprint of desire. But in that experience when I was in Iran, I remember everybody was around this kind of, there wasn't a fire, but there was like this, they had made kebabs and whatnot, and there was the charcoal fire, and anyways, there was this very huge kind of gathering and crowd, and suddenly I felt this banishment of my own value. I felt I had lost something. And I remember walking, and it wasn't my place, but it was just the place the whole group was staying at. And I remember walking to the back of this cottage where there was no one. And there was this small, like this is at night. This is like 10 p.m. at night. And there was an opening at the side of the house. Imagine like one, just this small gap that led to the back of the house. I go into this like small gap in the, no, it's not a gap, it's like this opening before the house connects to the wall of the property, and I walk and I go to the back of the building. You know, and that was the time where I didn't smoke cigarettes then, but I remember I had gotten a cigarette from someone, and and guys, this is really personal, I'm sharing, but I think it's important. I went to the back of that building, and I sat there in the back in complete darkness, you know, with my back to the building, looking at in the neighbor's house from the back of the cottage, where it was just this glass and it was pitch black dark inside. This giant glass window, strange window they had, their neighbors had. And it was completely dark inside, and the only light was the street lamp and the whiteness of the street lamp, and what do you call it? The cigarette I had lit. And at the time, I didn't smoke cigarettes, so it was just like I had lit it, and I was in this drunken state of mind, you know, in this sort of self-loathing. At that point, I hadn't noticed my inner realms yet. And I remember just being there, and I took the cigarette, and I had become so numb. There was some sort of internal suffering going on in that moment, where I had become careless, and I put the burning of the cigarette on my hand. Do you know? And it was, for a second, it was as if I had become so emotionally numb. I had felt so emotionally non-existent that it was as if the body had become an object. It wasn't no longer my body. Oh my God, you know, I gotta take care of it like a Ferrari, you know. it was it was a moment where it was losing. It was one of those early defeats of my lifetime. It was one of those moments where I had entered the meaningless. And it was an intense moment. Long story short, people suddenly come. I hear footsteps, and it's like, you know, my family members come, and they all come there, and they're like, let's go find ghosts, you know. My brother Ramin and a friend called Sina, those two guys came. And yeah, it's strange in life. When you're honest, the world is given a chance to serve you. But when you're dishonest, you have been rude to the world. Being rude to the realm is the biggest dishonor. What does that mean? That means you could be the greatest warrior or the greatest kind of like person, and then there's a simple moment, you know, where someone says something nice, and let's say you're dismissive and rude. You see, dismissal means you don't care. And anytime you don't care for someone, I'll be honest, when someone complains or when someone criticizes or judges a person, that means they cared. It's strange, no? Because really, there's been people who I haven't known, like when you walk in a street in a busy city, you know, it's as if there's so many things you don't care. You're in the city to go do your work, you know? But there's so many types of work being done. If we can honor the breath in the body, we have allowed the mind to become the ally of its own soul. Behind your eyes, your attention is the king of your inner realms. You may not know it. In front of your eyes, your attention is the servant of the human effort. That means there is a film where we're all actors in, and it's called humanity. And it has been 4 billion years, or some say 5 billion years in the making. It took us 4 billion years to just be able to be conscious and suffer. Sometimes when you know, there's moments of sorrow or joy, I think about like, could my happiness be the first time in the world that me as a creature demonstrated something. It's like sometimes I feel the way I live is adding to some database that surpasses my dualistic comprehension. Sometimes I feel it's not that the world is watching itself, the world is recording itself. The world is reporting back to itself. And we don't know how complex thought can move. Right now, we should care enough to just evolve language. That's the first domino. For a new language means new ability. When you become an artist of your own life, you will see that so many people are running after heaven, not realizing the earth is in the heavens. That the only heaven that's required to find is to notice this moment. This simple moment where all complexity stands. It's fascinating. The endlessness of the sky is the biggest taunt to a temporal being. But that's the inspiration. That the eternal is at the edge of our fingertip. Yet at that edge, there is no finger, there is no person. We must prepare advance individual communication. We must prepare for advanced collective communication. That means I was thinking literally, I mean, we're lucky. We're lucky like we're on an island on a galactic level, okay? Okay, guys, it's all good now. I can continue. This episode's a bit shaky, guys. I see these every time I give a talk, like a flight, like I'm a pilot in an airplane. So sometimes there may be turbulence, you know. You can leave a review in the comments section how the flight was. But we have to now care about the inner sky. So, I don't know. We can say that it's a blank slate, that people, we can't judge anyone because they are also the environment. It's like judging a person is also judging all the environments that their sense of self arises from, or it arises as a separation from, you know. There has been moments where I have felt I have just been one thing my whole life. There's been moments where I felt I have been nothing. There's been moments where I felt it's just chaos and order dancing and I'm just the mirage. There's been moments where I have thought about the infinite and the inconceivable watcher. I've even seen beyond that. But there's something more than any of these things that are received. Something more significant than enlightenment. That really what it is to notice the light in your eyes. So many traditions, even religious systems, you know, metaphysical, let's say spiritual systems, they declare they love the world. They declare that they are one with the world, that we are all good people. Yet, if we are not trying to fix the engine of this car that's broken down, how much do we love it? You know, it's like somebody sitting in a broken car. I love this car. Look at how perfect. Look at how clean the interior is. The inner realm of it. Look at how the outside of the car is clean. But people are like, does it work? And you will see no. That inside your car could be beautiful, but it is the engine, it is its mechanics that needs to be watched. I was in a Starbucks drawing a certain geometrical design, and this lady who was there with her daughter asked, this is years ago, she asks, what are you doing? What are you drawing? And I'm like, I'm designing something. And then she's like, what are you studying? And then I say mechanical engineering. Then her young daughter beside her is like, what is mechanical engineering? And then the mother just turns around and looks at me and says, what is it? And really what it is how something works. You're looking at the way a system is moving. Ultimately, all knowledge is observing a landscape. You know, now we've become more sophisticated creatures through subjective evolution. Now there's also, we can observe the inner landscape. You know, they say that when thoughts were first arising, let us say, or I want to say thoughts were arising, when people were getting acquainted to their inner realms, it was as if the person, imagine like in some sort of Mayan or Aztec level of kind of advancement, you know, back in the day, and the person had a thought, and the thought was like, run there, you know. And it was like the first time inner realms was starting to move. The engines of the gears in the inner realms were beginning to move. So the first thing the person thought, they thought that voice was something else. Do you know? You know, it's strange. In my youth, when the idea of religion arose, it's like there is a very fascinating paradox in religion. A paradox that is, I would say, where theology and metaphysics from a philosophical branch can intersect. It is this notion that God created man, but God is everywhere in everything, and also being a surveillance system. So it's as if God is man. So God has not created anything. We are most likely a higher dimensional intelligence noticing its lesser, inferior dimensions. That means if something in this life causes me to be violent and intense, You know, like let's say there's an intense situation. It's as if you cannot fight fire with a flamethrower. Can you imagine? Like, imagine there's a forest fire, the firemen have come, and they're about to pour water on the fire, and then some guy's like, hey guys, I got this. Let me give it a try. And the firemen are just staring at the guy in like surprise, and the guy suddenly takes out, and they're like, is it water? And the guy is flame throwing the fire, imagine. The fireman would be like, get this guy out of here. You know, they'd hose the guy. But the whole point is you don't fight fire with fire. That's why we have minds. You don't enter the divine through the divine. You don't fight the unknown with the unknown. You see, there is something where a person looks at a squirrel on a branch, like an actual squirrel, and it's like, all right, what's the life purpose of this creature? And you see, it's just there to be an implementation of its design. And when I look at the human being, I'm like, no way. We're also squirrels on our own branches of knowledge. Thinking that in the middle of, like, I could tell you that there's been times where I have spoken where it has been inseparable. The silence and the words, the meaning of the silence and the meaning of the words have been the same view. If you care about your realm, you'll notice it. Do you know right now we're at a phase where the great symphonies have not begun, the great transformations? The great transformations is a suggestion that human skill is the savior of man. It is our mindfulness and our skill that will be our salvation. It is a design problem, the advancement of civilization. That means the individuals who are piloting the plane of existence is one side that there has to be, like we have seen it. For example, Manly P. Hall, Muji, Eckhart Tolle, all these people, they're here to, in some sense, ground the inner realms. Do you know those? You know, there's so many people before me where I was as if like I bowed in the honor of what they have done. There has been so many human beings that they realize that in order to awaken from the linguistic simulation, we have to shake the linguistic simulation. There's moments in life where there has been a chaotic intensity, but the chaos hasn't been evil. That means that's kind of like mindfulness, when you realize like you were angry at the wrong person. This is why I think the greatest leaders on this planet will be children and families who are the middle child. The middle child is the watcher. I'm personally a twin, so I don't have that problem. But like, but the middle child is the observer. You know, like in, what do you call it? Like in the movie Thor, there was that epic guy with the sword. I forget his name, but it was like he was such an epic character where he had the sword and he was watching over the whole galaxy in the movie Thor. And I feel the middle child of the any family on this planet is like that guy. You know? The watcher of the meaning. That means people that you say watch others, learn from others, and they also say watch yourself. So when you watch yourself, that's where the gems are. That's where the pearl is. The pearl is the recognition that your life is where you are occurring simultaneously along this cosmic level of an event. That means when I realized you can identify with anything, it was like the death of identity. I was like, what is this? Where's the honor then? If I can identify, that means imagine like people stopped identifying with their age. And we had 50-year-old people saying they were 5 years old. You know, and we're like, hey man, how old are you? And the person's like, I identify as 5. Like, the guy laughs. But I'm saying it's a 50-year-old man though. I'm saying its identity is choice. Choice is observation of a spectrum and solidification of that. This world is moving into an era where the communicators need to advance before the civilization can be built. It's as simple as that. Now, the advanced communicator is moving on towards piloting, becoming a pilot. So you can say it's as if like the person was a stewardess, a hostess on the airplane, like asking if people want orange juice and apple juice. But that is the advanced communicator observing duality to then move on to the pilot of consciousness. That means there is a lot of the things that the person fears. If they fast forward their life in their inner realms, it makes no sense to fear. That means I understand. Right now, people want anarchy and freedom at the same time. They want to be free, but they don't want any order. That means it's hilarious. No, we want to live in an ordered society, but we want a chaotic freedom. You know? And the issue is the order is not efficient. You know what that means? That means the events in life have been accelerating and becoming more sophisticated, but the systems that are giving meaning to these events have not been updating. That means an ideological system that has not created an exit from itself is a terrible ideological system. You know what I mean? That means we should treat beliefs and thoughts and ideology as houses, as structures, but structures in the inner realm. And trust me, I've had philosophical discussions with the various kinds of people. Various. Throughout my whole life. I mean, especially after 2011, I would say. But like, I've always had this fascination with what's going on in this world. What's going on in this world? You know? Like that wonder is in the background. Once it becomes conscious, then your trust in the world becomes the emergence of the greatest self, not the trust in a self, in an ideological self. That means whoever's listening, I want you to at some point in this lifetime go in front of a mirror and bow. Stare at that person in the mirror and bow. Bow to yourself. For that self is where the meaning of the world is coming from. Contentment means the content doesn't bother you. It means you have found a moment where language is not the owner of the meaning of the experience. There is this notion of virtue in yoga. And they say there's 2 kinds of virtue in the yogic mindset. One kind of virtue is the virtue of the innocent. It's the child that doesn't know better. It is the fool that doesn't know better. Then there is the warrior archetype. Then, when you're done searching for fun, the playground becomes a battlefield where you have one lifetime to rage against the dying of the light, as Dylan Thomas says. And we want gentle, let me tell you, it's like Yeah, it's like a kingdom back in the day in medieval times being sieged at night, and somebody's like, yo, man, I hear noises and chants outside the walls. The person's like, hey, man, don't worry about it. It's like that. That's how the youth can't act, it doesn't know, so it can't do anything. Do you know? That's the first kind of virtue. But then the virtue of the warrior. The virtue of the warrior, that the warrior is like, oh shit, the kingdom is under siege, and I was sleeping in a comfortable bed. But now the sword is my pillow. Because defense is the key when there's a siege. Defense is the key, then an immediate research project to see who the head of the snake of the other kingdom is. That means if there was, in Sun Tzu made this clear, that when generals were at war, the generals were like chess masters. And the generals knew that if the one general was able to disconnect the troops of one kingdom from the commanding point of that kingdom, you know, from the mind, if they could separate the mind, which was the general, and the body, which was the troops, if one general could separate, could disconnect, that could make the soldiers dishonor their own general, that general would be cha-ching, we won. Why? Because then a controlled force comes and breaks a force that has been pushed out of control. And that is the thing. That when a person says there is something wrong, they have failed to see that they're the one who must make it right. Who else can move your eyes for you? That is the true teaching. Your moment of being is the only guru that you can truly ever see. We must usher the next generation of human beings to not just be like, oh, I gotta follow this language that entered my ear when I was a kid. No, you should care to see how far we can see, whoever you are. That means something that really fascinates me is that it could be a very meaningless event, activity, but I try to do it as if the fate of the world depended on it, or in my inner realms I animate it. Recently, of course, I've been more in the cave than in the gym. But I'll tell you this, that there was like I could do a lot of pull-ups, and there was a time where when I was doing it, the reason I could do a lot was because I had read somewhere this story from this bodybuilding forum, this story that there was this friend, these two friends that had gone for like just, you know, to explore nature and whatnot, to have a smoke. Then suddenly one of the friends gets a strange intuitive feeling. The guy had written this in the forum. And he says he looks back and he sees a tree fall on his friend. He sees a tree fall on his friend. And he runs there to lift the tree, and he's like literally crying, like it's such a shocking event. He goes to lift the tree is so heavy, life has already left his friend. And police come and everything come, you know, and the guy said he goes and he says the doctor said the moment the tree touched him, he died. The impact was too heavy for his lungs. Even if you tried to lift the tree, you couldn't do anything, right? But this guy who had lost his friend in this way, every time he was in the gym where he was doing a deadlift, or when he was any exercise, he was just in his inner realm seeing himself lift that tree off his friend. That means the number of the weight didn't bother him anymore. It was just an intensity pouring out. And that's where skill comes. You're not skilled if it's a sunny day, but if you can continue on the battlefield when it's raining. Whether your eyes are the source of that rain or whether the future generation's sorrow. We have dismissed the value of the human being. We have forgotten that we should all be kings. What does that mean? Kings and queens. What do I mean by that? That means when we think of the future generations, you are thinking from the ultimate value of your present. There has been tyrants. And there has been even like enlightened kings. I never knew this existed. I thought kings had been assholes. Excuse my language, but kings had been a-holes there in history. Then I realized in certain cultures they had enlightened king. And I'll tell you a story. This king in India in Vedic times, he gets a dream he's a beggar. He gets a dream he's a beggar. He wakes up and he goes to his like sage council, his sage consigliere. Sorry guys, excuse me. I got a bit emotional wiping moisture off my face. This king dreams he's a beggar. He freaks out. He's like, what the fuck? And he wakes up and he goes to this sage, this wise sage of his council in his palace. And he says to the sage, he says, what does it mean? The sage, let me see if I can remember this correctly. He tells the sage, am I a beggar or am I a king? And the sage says, you're neither a beggar, you're neither a king. And he goes on to this mystical rank. The sage says, you're neither this, you're neither that, you're neither the self, you're neither the world. You know, you are. And the king suddenly says, you're correct, I am neither a king. Guys, let me find the book. Just hang on 2 minutes. Let me find the book and I read the exact thing because it's epic. There's details I'm missing. Sorry guys, I couldn't find it. But pretty much the guy is saying, I don't know if it was even Jenica, but it was this king says, I am neither a beggar, neither a king, something like I am the ever-present, something in those lines. And that's the thing. There are kings that they are not kings because they control their kingdom. Do you know what I mean? That means they don't understand the idea of the king. I think those kings we hear in history that were vicious, even certain French emperors, we would see like the Louis lineage. We must be like kings when we think about the future generation. A king that comes and sees a corner of its kingdom suffering and being like, how have you dared yourselves to suffer? And assistance is granted immediately. You see, the point of it is to keep the world alive. I feel it's like poetically endless CPRs of the vitality of the life force. There's nothing more inspiring than seeing the advanced communicator running into the battlefield of an unknown realm. That means only an object fears its absence, and a subject fears the void, but that which is beyond fear. That's the end of fear. The fear of eons that keeps keeping the wheel spinning. It is fear. Fear that you are lost. Not recognizing that even if it was a simulation in the realm, the simulation is happening from somewhere real. So we are in the presence of life. We are not statues. We are that which is moving the statue. We are energy, unable to be created or destroyed, but it's consciousness moving, changing from form to form to form to form. There was this guy, they asked him about reincarnation, Sri Prabhupada. He gave an answer that was so simple, and in my mind it was hilarious due to its epic depth. But the person asked him, what do you mean about reincarnation, man? What do you mean? How are you even thinking about this idea of reincarnation? You know? And Sri Prabhupada says, it's like, just like how you don't have the same body as like you did when you were a kid, and you don't even have the same clothing and whatnot. So it's literally like that, where the nature of reality is just leaping. Evolution is a leap. We are leaping our way towards an advanced civilization, and if we have jetpacks like made domestic in the future, everybody's going to be leaping to work. Can you imagine? You're late for work. You imagine, like, okay, here. This would be the safest way to have jetpacks, where we create an invisible spherical force field around ourselves when we're jumping off. So that means when the person falls, they're in like some visible force field. Yeah. But the whole point is, like, people have thought about the archetype of angels having wings. That means having access to the known land and the unknown sky. I could totally see myself, like, it would probably help so much. Guys, jetpacks is gonna make cars obsolete. And it's gonna be the perfect solution to health, to keeping a healthy civilization. That means people have jetpacks with this spherical defense technology, imagine in the future, and they go on the top of a building, and the guy's like, oh man, I'm late to work. The workplace, imagine it's a couple blocks there. The guy's like, all right, I'll get there in 2 minutes probably. He jumps from one building with the jetpack activating. Do you know? See, we're creatures that cannot fly, but we can get close to it. I mean, not as an invention, like, for example, from the morality of the Wright brothers. Imagine we've had the Wright brothers create the airplane. Imagine in the future we have the Wrong brothers, these two brothers that come and they create hyperspeed travel. The Wrong brothers. It is true that life is a temporary event for the individual self, but for the collective, life doesn't have an individual value at first. That means it's as if before we saw hell, we saw heaven. That's the notion. You saw what works. You saw efficiency. You paid attention to what the design of the efficiency of the moment was, rather than entertain inefficiency. You see, it's like we're piloting our attention through different events which we storify into our lives, where we are a personification of the realm, believe it or not. It's like, imagine an extraterrestrial asked its extraterrestrial friend, and he's like, uh, uh, I'm just thinking of this narrative where human beings are individuals, yet the collective is the only way. I mean, what can you do when you're an individual? You either remain individual, you either go into the void, you either subjectively entertain the dualistic, or you even go beyond the dualism. So what that means is there could be a huge chance that the higher dimensions are inconceivable to dualism. So if we identify our consciousness with duality, with language, there's many ways the world is occurring that we may not be able to even see right now. That means the moment the person said, I believe in this, it was that moment where that this became the mass that was fully connected to the face. That means there are some people who think they have ideas, but they don't realize that ideology is a bunker. The battlefield requires your present attention, which is where the glory of the world is allowed. You see, think of it this way. When a person looks at their life so far, from a long-term view, it would be like they may feel they don't deserve some things, they deserve some things. But if you made it more snapshot, if we stopped judging what we deserve based on a film mindset, but rather a frame mindset, like small pictures, every moment is its own picture. In a moment of unknown, because you don't know what you deserve actually comes. Because it's what's left for you to know. That means the issue with the intellect, the Sufis would say, was that it's like whipping a dead donkey to run faster. What it means is there is a certainty that comes with rationality in its aftermath that feels victorious in the moment, but will feel as if there is something happening that it's not seeing. Because what is the purpose of laughter? What is the purpose? What is the meaning? Like when you see someone, let's say, crying in front of you, it's like, as a pure materialist, what is the meaning of those tears? Why is it that when someone cries or someone laughs, people are influenced by that? They pay attention to it. Why is it that if you see someone crying, do you know, you pause a little? Some part of your nature pauses for a moment to see what's going on. Why is that there? Because the tears suggest a hidden battle that we cannot see, yet the being is enduring through it. For if we act weak now, the future generations miss out on how really strong they could be. The elemental realm has its dance. The witness has its peace. And beyond the witness, no hand holds the glory of the universal empire. The only king is the faint glow of humanity in the future generations that just needs to be like a lantern shielded from the wind. You know, like a candle flame shielded from the wind. That is the only. It's as if they ask the person, what are you trying to do? And you're like, okay, if you can't change a system, you create a backup. You know? There's been some situations in my life where I've controlled Z out of there. Some situations in life you gotta control Z, and some situations you gotta control Shift Z. If you have found an inner contentment, your eyes have already journeyed back from the void. Now the only game remains is the second virtue that I was saying. The warrior has seen chaos, but now still understands the value of innocence. That means being a thug in this world is not true strength. It's not true power. You know? Being violent and vicious, don't think people back in the warriors back in the day are looking at modern violence and thuggery and being like, this is what a warrior is. A warrior is a person who has understood that you don't need a weapon, which is the call to honesty. That try it out in your life. You know, try out dishonesty and honesty. Try it out until you know how to pilot through. And you realize that honesty means the simpler self is allowed and the inner child is allowed access. Dishonesty means the inner child has been banished. You have stopped being a human being. The environment has taken over you. Because honor without honesty is like, you know, it's, I would say they are inseparable. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. Pretty much I'm saying that our moment of awareness of the sensory realm arises like a sphere where its edge is like the edge of the sky or the room we're in. And inside the sphere, there is stuff moving. There's elements, atoms moving, but there's also this weird thing that as atoms have complexly organized, they found a way to observe themselves beyond their self. So a linear system is doing weird non-linear things, and we're like, do we still treat it as just linear, or do we update our perspective on perhaps entertaining a multidimensional perspective on it? That means there is a type of power that is conditional, and there's a type of power that is unconditional. Unconditional power is true because it doesn't need to do anything to be powerful. It is. It knows it is. But those who demonstrate their power, like let's say a dictator trying to control something, they are weak. That's why they have to show themselves who they are by their action. For in this world, the strength of the future generations is just in vision. How you open your eyes to the moment is like how you have saluted the presence of the cosmos. You know, it's as if opening your eyes to a world where you're dishonored, disgraced. You feel fallen. Or would you rather open your eyes in a civilization that welcomes you? Because how else can we become advanced? Every person's advantage is that they're a unique DNA and no one has their eyes. That is the power of the human being. That if we want to roar, it's the freedom behind your eyes that suggests the freedom you have in front of it. Rise, mankind. Rise. Thanks for listening, guys. I'll share the Discord link. Blessings.